The atlas waits on a wooden table that still remembers daylight, its grain warm with old sunshine, even though the moon has already climbed. The room is quiet in that kind way that is not empty at all, filled with small sounds. The soft click of a cooling kettle, the gentle rustle of curtains when a breeze passes through, the little sigh a house gives when it has settled for the night. The atlas is a little larger than it needs to be, with a cover that looks like midnight stitched to leather, and when you slide your palm across it, you can feel shallow constellations pressed into the surface, tiny points that could be stars or just the memory of them. You open it not to conquer a place with lines and notes, not to measure its secrets and make them smaller, but to let the place rise up, whole and unbroken, and meet you where you are. Tonight there are no monsters. There is only a town that breathes under pines, a river that remembers, a bell tower that keeps time even when it will not ring, and 100 small, kind oddities that refuse to hurry. You are not here to hunt anything down. You are here to fall gently into the shape of gravity falls at night. The first page creaks like a porch step, and the paper carries the faint smell of cedar and rain. The inks are not bright. They are dusky and calm, colors that understand. Your eyelids may grow heavy and that your thoughts might wander down familiar paths. In one corner, the map maker has drawn a crescent moon, and if you look closely, you can see a reflection of the town mirrored inside it. Tiny houses sleeping, lamps dimmed, a diner sign humming a lullaby in neon that no one hears but the moths. The legend says very little because not everything needs to be labeled to feel true. There is a mark for water that looks like a slow breath, a mark for trees that looks like listening, a mark for roads that looks like thread. There is a suggestion toward north, as if the compass itself were being thoughtful. And there is a small handwritten note where a flourish might be, the kind of note you only write late at night, when you are softer and braver at once. Turn the pages as you would turn a lantern down, gently. So you do. You turn them without rush. Your fingertips learn the weight of the paper, how it yields and holds at the same time. The atlas does not show distances as crowflight, but as dream drift. A mile is what your mind can travel while listening to cricket song. 2 miles is what a story can cross between a sip of tea and a yawn that is more invitation than fatigue. There are places on the map where the ink grows thinner, as if even the map maker knew that certain paths should be walked with care. And there are places where the lines loop like handwriting learned in summer. You trace one of those loops now, a river in the dark that looks like a piece of silver ribbon left on a table after a party, and you understand before you read the caption that this is where we will start. Not at the edge of town, not in the bright heart of it, but along the water that runs past both, a water that carries memory, the way a song carries its last note into silence. If you listen, the atlas seems to make a sound that is not a sound, only the suggestion of one, like a shell held to the ear, a hush that holds other hushes, the promise of a story that refuses to rush at you. The pages ahead are thick with places that glow in the dark without startling you, a marketplace that wakes only when the moon is high, a library that remembers what you have forgotten and keeps it safe until you need it back, a bridge worn smooth by footsteps and the secret carvings of people who loved and left and loved again. There will be codes later, but they will not challenge you, they will cradle you. There will be creatures, but they will be gentle, guardians in the quiet. There will be memories of summer, but they will not tug, they will float. And you will float with them until the atlas closes and the town drifts on without needing to be watched. You turn the page. The first chapter is a channel of ink that curves like a wrist and widens into a dark, soft mirror. The caption is written in small, careful letters as if not to disturb the water. The river that remembers. You let your eyes grow heavier. You let the room grow quieter. All journeys begin in listening. You're ready. At night, the river wears the sky like a shawl, and the shawl slips a little, and stars gather in the folds. By day, it looks like any other water you could name. Green where trees lean over it. Brown where it worries a bank. Ribbon bright where sunlight shears across. But in darkness, it slows in a way that is not sleep, only attendance, as if it understands that creatures in the forest need a pace they can trust when the world around them is full of small lives doing small, secret work. Bats skimming, owls measuring the distance between one branch and another, frogs speaking a language of patient syllables. The river is old enough to have heard all these voices, and young enough to still be surprised by a lantern bobbing along its edge, a child's whisper, a promise made into cupped hands and offered to the current. It remembers, which is to say, it holds without holding down. It carries, which is to say, it does not let go until letting go is a kindness. You stand where the bank is shallow and sandy, and you watch how the water braids around stones. There are places where it looks like woven hair, or like lines in a palm, and you understand why the older folks in town say they can read futures in it. They do not say fortunes. That would be too sharp a word. Futures here are like fog lifting from the surface just as the night begins to taste like morning. Shapes that come and are not grabbed at. Shapes that come and are allowed to move on. Sometimes, on certain quiet nights, known more by feeling than by calendar, the river appears to hesitate and then very gently to reverse, not with defiance, but the way a sleeper rolls to the other side of the bed in search of a cooler pillow. It is not a trick. It is a memory surfacing, an old path rewalked. The town has its stories about why this happens. Some say the river learned long ago to bring back things lost too quickly. Some say the moon hums to it, a lullaby with one backward verse, and the water cannot help but sing along. You follow the curve downstream, or perhaps upstream, because at night the difference matters less, and your feet find the ground as if the ground had been waiting. Pebbles give a little, sand hushes under your steps, reeds make that silk-soft sound they make when your hand passes through them. A fish turns just beneath the skin of the water, and the sky ripples. You can smell cedar and damp stone, and something sweet from the town bakery that has folded into the air and decided to take the path by the river, too. Now and then you come upon marks where others have been, boot prints with the edge taken off by time, the careful square prints of a raccoon, making its night work honest. A place where someone has sat and pressed the atlas of their own life into the sand, page after page of rest. There is a dock not far along, more suggestion than structure. Boards gray with years, nails not showing off, rope coiled the way a snake would sleep, if it did not have to be a snake at all. A lantern hangs there and knows your name, which is only to say it knows you are a person who needed to come to the water and be made quiet. Sit if you like. The wood keeps its warmth where the day wanted it, and the river keeps its cool where the night does. Between them is the right kind of balance to carry you. You can see down into the shallows where flat stones lie like sleeping bags, and minnows are glitches of silver. If you put your hand in, the river makes room without making a fuss, and if you scoop it up, you will feel how it slides out of your palm at the first chance, not as an escape, but as a decision to be itself again. This is how the town learned to let go of what it loves without losing it. The water teaches. You do not need to be told how many promises were made on this dock, how many apologies were practiced aloud and then said properly in the morning, how many children held jars with holes poked in the lid for nightlight fireflies and swore they would put them back after one story, two at most. The river remembers because the town needs it to, because someone should keep the shape of all those things even when roofs are shut and curtains pull in. Sometimes a boat comes by, not to go anywhere, only to be part of the going. The oars barely grip the water, and the boat knows the river's doing most of the work. People sit with their shoulders curved and their voices at the low volume you use when you do not want to wake someone who has fallen asleep on your shoulder. If you listen, you might hear the kind of laughter that happens when nobody is trying to be funny. You might hear a story paused at the right place and left there politely, because the next part is for morning. You might hear nothing at all, and it will be a kind of music anyway. There's a long bend where willows make their curtains and the path slips behind them. The kind of path only night knows, and if you step through, you will find a seat shaped by knees and elbows, leaning against the same place for years. Someone has left a thermos there, and although it is only a picture in the atlas, you would swear it is still warm. That is what memory does when you look at it kindly. It gives back just enough to keep you. Further along, the river widens into a patch of honest lake. Not the big one out past town where lanterns drift in festival rows, but a private widening where turtles learn patience and dragonflies play with geometry. Reeds draw lines that do not need to be straight to be understood. Frogs keep steady time. The atlas shows the names that people gave these little places in a spirit of friendship. Names passed down in a family, or borrowed from a book, and tried on for a summer, or invented on the spot because the night smelled like blueberries, and the person doing the naming could not imagine a future where it would smell any other way. If you whisper those names aloud, the trees will sway in agreement. If you cannot remember them later, the river will, and that is enough. When the current thinks to reverse, it does so without making a point of it. Leaves floating, surface down, decide to reconsider, and the little raft of twigs that a child built on a dare and forgot to retrieve glides gently back toward the dock, only to stop within arm's reach of the place where small hands learn to be careful. Sometimes people come out with a lamp and stand looking, not because they are surprised anymore, but because they like to see proof that time itself can make room for revisions without unkindness. The atlas has a note printed in a careful margin hand. On these nights, do not decide. It is a kind suggestion. You let it guide you. You watch the water turn around an old log and realize that it is not undoing what it has been. It is showing that the path through the world has more than one polite direction. By the time you return to where you began, the night has arranged itself into deeper layers, and the sky has learned a new handful of stars. The river holds them and does not drop a single one. Your shoulders have lowered. The air has softened your edges. The atlas does not rush you onward. You close the page the way you set down a cup you finish slowly, the way you tuck a blanket to one side just enough to let your leg breathe, and you turn to the next place where the ink is darker, where the lines gather like a choir beginning a hymn under its breath. It is a forest. You knew it would be. You can smell it already through the paper. The caption is a whisper, but it is easy to hear. Some forests talk with their leaves in wind and call it a day. The pines around Gravity Falls speak with needles that catch moonlight like small, wise tongues, and with trunks that hold the memory of every hand that has leaned against them when a person could not say out loud what needed saying. Each tree keeps a biography in rings, not as an archive of storms and summers for curious eyes and saws, but as a truth that does not need to be read to be known. When you step between them, the night changes its shape for you, making a path that is just as wide as your comfort and no wider. The forest is not a challenge here. It is a host. On the first steps, the ground is patient and springy, a carpet of needles pressed by decades of feet and paws, and the occasional wheelbarrow whose tire remembered the way long after the ride was over. Ferns lean in as if they have gossip and then think better of it, holding their secrets in a posture that looks like prayer from some angles and a green laugh from others. The air carries sap and damp, and the exact smell of yesterday's rain after it has stopped apologizing for itself. If you stop and close your eyes, the forest finds your balance for you. There is no rush to go deeper. There is only the gentle fact that deeper is there, and it is ready when you are. The whispering is not language, not really. It is the way needles scrape faintly across one another when a breeze has the manners to be metered. It is the way a trunk will creak from the inside because wood is still a little alive, still thinking its slow thoughts and changing them when it has to. It is the sound of a branch deciding there is nothing it must prove by holding onto a weight of ice it did not ask for, and dropping it at last with a sound that could wake a person who is tired of being brave all the time. In summer, the whispers are light and piney, the kind to thread between fireflies and sit in your hair without you knowing. In winter, they are dense and old and honest. In fall, the whispers are grateful for the few bright leaves that found their way into all this evergreen and made a small party of it. Every few yards, there is a clearing, not because the map says there must be one, but because someone once needed it, and the forest obliged. In one, a stump is a table, and a table is a place where two people left a deck of cards and a penknife one night, because sometimes you return to a game you both know how to play, and you cut your apples without talking about anything that hurts. In another clearing, there is a log that is not as dry as it looks, and it will put a little dark on the seat of your pants if you are not careful. And that is fine, because nobody minds in the morning. A third clearing holds a ring of stones arranged in a pattern that is not quite symmetrical, a circle that decided to be itself instead of a diagram. The stones keep heat longer than they should when people sit there and tell the kind of stories that do not require an ending. The atlas marks these places with tiny circles and notes so small the ink is almost shy. Good for listening, good for crying, good for quiet joy. If you stay still, the inhabitants will agree to ignore you. A deer will pass with the calm entitlement of something that knows it does not have to be elegant to be beautiful. A fox will stop because it feels like stopping, and then go because it feels like going. Somewhere higher up, a raccoon is practicing violin on a branch, which is to say, it is figuring out how to make the sounds it needs from its world. And though your eye may travel that way, your head will not turn, because the forest is teaching you how to practice politeness in the presence of small, brave acts. If you wish, you can set your palm against a tree. The bark will be rough in the way that keeps you awake but not alert, and behind it is a heart that does not beat like yours and still knows what a heart is for. You could tell it something if you like. People do. There are older stories, too, of people who climbed high to see how far the trees went, and of children who tied ribbons on low branches so the forest would remember their height. There is a story of a storm that came and took one giant down with a crack, and the next day the town came with saws and sorrow, and the stump was sanded smooth, and it became a table for summer pies and winter tea. Not all losses can be sweetened, but some can be shared, and the forest, which understands both, held the silence while the first pie cooled, and then made room for laughter when it arrived late but real. The atlas shows this stump table, and if you run your fingers over the picture, you can feel the smoothness where the wood gave up its roughness and kept its strength. If you walk long enough, the whispering will grow familiar, like a phrase learned in a language you do not speak but understand with your body. The path lifts and dips. The moon visits and strips and disappears again, content to be intermittent. There is a hill where someone has anchored a rope, not for danger or sport, but for the joy of leaning backward into trust and walking up with your whole weight, one slow foot after another, until you reach the top and find the bench that remembers the shape of 100 backs. From there, you can see the town as a scatter of small arrangements, lights level with your eyes, a geometry of comfort. The whispering changes at that height. It is softer, as if the trees are telling a secret not to you, but to each other. And because it is not for you, it is far more comforting to hear. Sometimes a person comes into these pines to ask a question they cannot put in a sentence. The forest answers with presence instead of content. The question becomes a shape on the ground. The shape grows edges where it needs them and blurs where it should. The person leaves with nothing solved and everything simpler. If you come to the forest with joy, it will magnify it. If you come with grief, it will hold it without weighing you down. If you come with nothing at all, it will give you the sense that nothing at all can be a kind of gift when you are tired of having to be something. When you go, you find that the whispering does not end at the last tree. It follows smaller and smaller the way the smell of pine follows when you carry a fallen cone in your pocket and forget it there until you find it on a laundry day and smile for no reason anyone else can see. The atlas shows your path in a line that has no ruler in it, only your night's particular way of moving. You run your finger along it back to the edge of the page, where the trees become the white of the paper and then become the room you are in again. The kettle on the table has made a small sound like agreement. The curtains know the wind by first name. You turn the next page. There are nights in Gravity Falls that carry a faint clicking, a tiny staccato you do not hear so much as feel across your forearms, a soft electricity that is not lightning at all, not skyborn, but meadow-born, leaf-born, and it arrives on the backs of small lanterns with minds of their own. The first fireflies of the season do not announce themselves in a parade. They attend like guests who know the host is tired and decide to arrive in ones and twos, to drift in from the edges of things, a fence line, a ditch, the shadows under a swing where grass has learned to stay short without being asked. One, then two, then a scatter that refuses to be counted. The meadow that was simply grass a moment ago becomes a moving language of dots, and nobody needs to read it to be soothed by it. The atlas draws them as pinpricks with halos, a color that is not quite green and not quite gold, and the caption leans into a margin note. Follow only if you want to go somewhere gentle. Children learn quickly that you do not chase fireflies, as you would a ball or a skipping hat. You offer your stillness the way you would offer a hand to a new dog, and if a light rests on your knuckle, you count it twice before you breathe. The old story in town says these were once sparks from a forge no one can find now. A small workshop at the edge of a lake where someone made hinges for gates that wanted to open on summer nights, and the sparks went into the grass instead of the water and decided they liked it there. There is a newer story told by someone who studies such things professionally, and it is full of good words and patient facts, and people listen with grateful faces and then go back to believing the sparks were working on gates. Both stories can be true in a town like this. There is a hill beyond the ball field where the grass is left long on purpose, and if you climb it, just as the last light is leaving the upper leaves of the tallest trees, the fireflies will make a ceremony of meeting you. They will light in a rhythm that is not your rhythm, and that is fine, because your rhythm is full of other things. They will write little punctuation marks in the air, commas where you have been using periods, ellipses where you thought you needed exclamation points. Children lie on their backs there and let the small lights rest in the space between blink and blink. People who have been working too long with their shoulders up come and remember what their collarbones are for. A couple who once thought they had to say everything each time they spoke will hold hands and find that nothing is a very good word. Someone who has felt very far away from themselves will place a jar with holes in the lid beside them, decide not to fill it, and watch the empty jar glow anyway as reflections get inside and make a borrowed constellation. In town windows, other lights answer. A bedroom lamp shaped like a star goes off and on because a child is practicing sleep like a skill. A porch light flickers not because it is broken, but because moths are voting about whether to hold still or to be moths. The diner sign hums and its colors make a low halo that would be ugly at noon and is perfect at midnight. On the hill, the fireflies do not mind. They know their own brightness. They have no need to compete. Sometimes the small parade of them will gather by a path and point, not in a line you could follow with a stick, but in a gentle drift that has a direction if you are willing to accept directions that are not straight. You go not because you must, but because the night is being kind enough to offer a route that is made of glimmers instead of arrows. Where the path dips, there is a grove of saplings that have not yet decided whether to be stoic or whimsical. They are in a phase of growth where everything is flexible. The fireflies draw among them the outlines of shapes that could be stories if you were less sleepy. A house, a boat, a sweater with sleeves so long they will never run out. If you stand there with your hands in your pockets, the pockets will feel deeper. If you think of a person you love, the thought will not hurt. If you think of a person you miss, the missing will be part of the loving instead of separate from it. The atlas has ink here that is slightly thicker, as if the pen slowed because something delicate was being traced. The note says only, "This is where people whisper wishes out loud, but softly enough that nobody would be embarrassed if a squirrel heard." Back on the hill, someone has brought blanket. Someone else has brought pie. The pie is still warm because in this town pie often is at strange hours, and there are forks and no plates, and nobody minds. The fireflies surround the scene without comment because their job is illumination, not critique. They land on fingertips and jacket shoulders. They climb wire glasses and look back at the wearers. They get into hair and make it look like the night sky agreed to come down and be personal. A very small dog tries very seriously not to chase them and succeeds half the time, which is more than enough. A very old cat watches with a face that says it knew this would happen and is pleased to be right again. If you brought a jar, you may be tempted to catch one and then another and make a small private lantern. Many do. In this town, catching is not counted against you if releasing comes next. Children learn to say hello and goodbye in the same breath with this practice, and adults relearn it. There is a particular sound a jar makes when a firefly lands inside, not glass against glass, but a kind of pause in the air, a held syllable, and it can make you feel like you were trusted with a secret you did not even ask for. You watch the light. You count to 10. You lift the lid. You do not hurry the leaving, and the leaving does not make you sad. It makes you part of the night in a way you were not before. Sometimes the first fireflies of the season arrive on the same evening that a sweater is finished. It happens more often than you would think. Yarn comes off needles and the last loop is pulled through and padded. And the thing that was a project is a garment now, and someone who loves color more than theory holds it up, and the fireflies decide to approve in the way they know how, which is to flicker approval across all the bright stitches in a way that makes even the most careful pattern look as if it is breathing. Laughter happens then, the particular kind that tastes a little like relief and a little like sugar. People say things like, look at that, and of course, and oh you, and the pronouns can mean the sweater or the night or the person holding both. When you are finally tired, the fireflies do not escort you so much as they allow you to carry a little of their light with you in your seeing. Down the hill, the town streets are not busy, only present. A bike left leaning is a note rather than a mistake. A mailbox with a flag up is a promise delayed until morning. A garden with its leaves turned up to catch dew is a congregation. The atlas shows your path as dots here and there where you thought to look, and the caption at the bottom of the page says, "You can turn this page now or keep it open while you sleep. Either way, the lights know what to do. You turn it because the night has more to share and because your eyes are heavy in the pleasant way, and the atlas gives with that same porch step sound. And next there will be stone and ivy and a bell that listens more than it speaks." The first fireflies linger even after that, tiny after-images that dance at the edges of your next thought, polite as good company that knows when to leave, comforting as the last lamp turned low before all the house lights go down. You tuck the blanket under your elbow. You let a yawn have its way. You look back once and see the hill glitter like a button box tipped into velvet. Then you go on, page by page, deeper into Gravity Falls, which waits with patience and odd, steady love for people who will meet it in its favorite hour, the kind where the world agrees to be softer without asking for anything in return. The bell tower does not rush to be seen. It stands back from the road the way a thoughtful person stands back from a conversation, happy to listen longer than they speak. Ivy has taken to it not as a conquest, but as a companion, a green scarf looped around old stone shoulders. By daylight, you might pass it with a nod and a, "There it is." By night, the tower seems to move closer without moving at all, as if the town leans toward it, the way sleepers lean toward cool pillows. The clock face holds steady. Its hands know what to do. The bell above them is a patient circle of metal that remembers every sound it has ever made, and it remembers the many nights it chose not to make one. People call it the silent bell tower, even though it is rung. It is rung at weddings and once for a pie contest that needed a finish line, and for storms that asked for attention, and for the occasional mistake when a sleepy caretaker bumped a lever and apologized to the whole town in the morning with a plate of cinnamon rolls. Mostly, though, the bell prefers restraint, silence in Gravity. Falls is not absence, it is shape. The tower keeps that shape for everyone. You go at an hour when the sidewalks are soft, when the bakery has turned to a low glow, when porch swings have finished their last slow back and forth. The path to the tower is narrow enough to feel invited and wide enough to feel safe. Gravel gives underfoot with a familiar hush. A cat who is on night patrol and takes the job seriously acknowledges you and returns to looking at nothing in particular with intense interest. The wooden door at the base of the tower has been opened and closed so many times that it has learned how to be quiet about it. It gives way and the air changes, cooler, with the smell of dust and stone and faint oil from the clockworks above. Inside there is a narrow stair that once creaked and has learned to hum instead. Each step up is the same and not the same. You could count them, but you do not have to. The walls are marked with pencil lines where caretakers over the years measured growth spurts against dependable stone. There are initials at kid height and higher up, initials repeated with steadier hands and new dates. A small shelf halfway up keeps a tin of chalk and a notebook with a stub of pencil tied to it on string. The notebook holds simple entries. Oiled the north gear, found a swallow's feather on the third landing, left the window open to listen to rain. The pages make a good sound when turned, a soft, unmarried clap that belongs only to notebooks kept near important machines. The room where the clock works is not loud. Gear teeth meet with the confidence of old friends who have told their best stories and are content to sit shoulder to shoulder and watch the night through the window. A pendulum keeps a sentence going, long and even. You can see hand-cut metal that someone filed smooth, and you can see where someone else, years later, filed it smoother. This is how time is kept in a small town. By agreement, by care, by repetition, with affection. The clock face glows just enough to be useful. Its numbers are the kind children learn first, clear and round. Its hands are polite. Above that room, the bell. It rests in a cradle of beams that smell like their own forest. There is a rope, but it is tied up and out of the way, not to prevent ringing, but to keep the bell from feeling obliged. You can stand near and feel the way metal holds cool longer than wood, the way round things carry their own quiet gravity. Sometimes, on nights when fog lays low and the moon is guessed behind gauze, people swear they hear the bell in their sleep. One note, not loud, not even all the way formed, more suggestion than strike. The town wakes the next morning calmer than it would have been. Whether the bell sounded or the town needed to believe it did, the effect is the same. Time felt held. There is a ledger in a drawer with lists of ringings. Weddings are underlined. The storm and no need to write the decade. Everyone knows, has 3 lines, because the bell kept people home and that mattered. There are blank lines, too, left on purpose for the times when the tower did nothing and was still part of everything. Someone years ago wrote in the margin, "Silence observed for the sake of it." You close the drawer without making it thud. From the tower window, the town is a mild constellation. A few porch bulbs, the diner's low hum, a living room lamp left on for a teenager who always comes home a little late and just fine. The road is a thread with no hurry in it. The river reflects stars in a way that would make any clock jealous if clocks were built to envy. You lean on the sill where many elbows have leaned and find the groove made by that leaning to be exactly your size. The bell above you does not ring, and somehow that feels like a gift made just then for you. If you listen long enough, you learn the other clocks. A refrigerator across the street cycles with a bass note. A small dog collar tag taps once against a metal bowl, and then is quiet, because the dog is certain of its water. 2 blocks over, a wind chime has lost one tube and sounds better for it. All these measures add up to a town that knows when it is time to rest. When you leave, you pull the door to with the same careful hand you used to open it. The cat has made a small circle on the step and is now a loaf of night with eyes, and those eyes half close as if to say that the bell tower is in good pause. You walk back through the gravel hush and carry the tower's silence with you. There are places to spend it. Like a coin you keep for vending machines you only pass in dreams. You do not hear the bell as you go, and yet you feel timed in a kind way. Hours have their edges padded here. Minutes move with rounded corners. The atlas shows the tower on the page as a simple drawing. Stone, ivy, clock face, bell. Beside it, A note in the same small, careful hand as before. If you cannot sleep, do not count sheep. Count laps of the pendulum, one kindness forward, one kindness back. And then you turn the page because the night has opened another door, cloth and canvas and strings of lights between trees, a market with no money in it, everything priced in stories and small favors, opening only when the moon has climbed to its best height. It begins with a few lanterns hung where no hooks were earlier, a rope tied between two trunks that never minded being polite to rope. A table appears, two sawhorses and a door that somewhere else would be a door, and tonight is a counter. Cloth unrolls that has been sewn from mismatched squares, and the squares tell stories in their colors. The blue from someone's summer curtain, the red from an apron that saw dozens of pies, the green from a shirt worn thin at elbows by gardening. The marketplace never arrives all at once. It collects itself like a picnic, whose invitees brought more than they needed, and just enough of what somebody else forgot. The stalls are small worlds. One is nothing but jars lined in brief rows, their lids painted in patient brushstrokes, ash blue, butter yellow, cloud white. The labels are handwritten and soft. Rain from the night you first learned to whistle, the smell of old paper mild, a memory of laughing without knowing why. The stall keeper, who looks both familiar and not, everyone does in moonlight, lets people hold the jars to their noses or just against their chests. Trades are made for pots of time, for a story told quietly, for the promise to water a neighbor's porch plant when they're gone for 2 days next week. Money would be rude here. Value is understood in other units. Across the way, a map seller who never uses the word map. They lay out folded papers that are routes to things that are not places. One paper shows a path from a too loud day to a small, quiet one. Another marks a safe crossing from I don't know yet to I think I do. The legend tells you how to read these routes. Follow the beat of your own footsteps. Turn left at the second deep breath. Stop near the bench that has found a way to be every bench. People choose the maps with their eyebrows raised in a way that means they're ready. There is a pie stall. Of course there is. The pies are not showy. Their crusts are golden by arrangement with ovens that have known their business for years. The fillings have names that are recipes from memory rather than lists of ingredients. Cousin sleepover. End of the school year. Back porch after rain. A sign says, slices cut as requested. Extra sugar on the corner crumbs free for kids who helped carry the table. The person behind the pies never seems harried because the line moves at the speed of choosing kindly, which is slow. A stringed instrument corner sits on a woven rug, one fiddle, one guitar with a pick tucked under the strings, a banjo that remembers more songs than it plays. People take turns without being asked to. The music is all edges soften, tunes that walk more than run, songs that have known work but are not tired of joy. A child is given the bow to draw one long note and is cheered for it as if a new house were lifted into place. There are practical things too. A stall that mends, a box of buttons to match the shirt you love, a sleeve to hide a scrape on a favorite book. A woman stitches while she listens to the person telling her about the rip and nods at the parts of the story that have nothing to do with fabric, because fabric is never only fabric. There is a man who sharpens knives, but only bread knives tonight, because the market thinks of tomorrow's breakfast too. He works with a touch that makes the blade look like it has had a good nap. Currency here is counted in favors and futures. A jar is exchanged for the promise to paint a fence panel in the cooler hours next week. A slice of pie is paid for in a steady hour of chopping firewood for the woman whose hands ache when it rains. A book, How to Grow Tomatoes. When the weather is confused, goes to someone who will read it aloud to someone else who sees better with their ears. A sweater pin shaped like a small star goes to a teenager who will teach the stall keeper how to fix the stall keeper's phone. The market writes its ledger in muscle memory rather than ink. Around the edges, little surprises. A bowl of smooth stones with a sign that says, "Take one if your pocket needs ballast." A basket of letters addressed to the person who needs a kind paragraph tonight, each one written by a neighbor on a slow afternoon with tea rings on the paper, a jar with pencils and a note. Draw your house from the outside. Doesn't have to look like your house to count. The drawings, tall, short, triangular, square, hang from a line and are clipped with small wooden clothespins that look like they enjoy their jobs. The market has its rules, but no one posts them. They are simple. Arrive with your shoulders lower than they were, leave with them lower still. If you see someone wandering without landing anywhere, share your landing. If your pockets are full, be prepared to empty them into someone else's hands gently. If you came to sell only one thing, be ready to sell two. The thing you brought and the attention you give while someone tells you about why they want it. Children run at the edges and then slow without being told because the market's air takes quick steps and smooths them. Someone has chalk and draws the hopscotch, but the squares are labeled with things like nap and second slice and cloud shaped like a dog, and splayed feet land on each with equal pleasure. A baby laughs the laugh that makes three people nearby smile without looking to see who made them do it. When the moon shifts past its high place and starts back down, the market understands. Trades finish. Instruments rest their backs against chairs. Jars find the people who needed them and go home inside tote bags that smell like bread and soap. The line at the pie stall shortens to none, and the person behind it cuts one last corner piece and slides it into a small box for the caretaker of the bell tower, who always arrives late and says, "You didn't need to," and everyone pretends to believe that. Then tables are lifted, not like burdens, but like well-loved objects who have had a nice night and are ready to go back to their day jobs. Lanterns are unhooked and lowered into arms, and their light, without embarrassment, seems pleased to be carried. A broom moves lightly through the trampled grass, not to erase footsteps, but to say goodnight to them. A last jar is discovered under a chair, a wish you forgot you made when you were 6. It is left by the path for the person who finds it to be the person who needed it. You carry a small paper package that smells like cinnamon and a folded map to something you cannot name yet. You did not plan to trade for either, and you are certain you traded fairly. The atlas shows the market as a pattern of dots and lines, lanterns and cloth, and in the margin, the small, careful note reads, "Market opens when the moon is helpful, closes when yawns become contagious." Your own yawn agrees. You turn the page toward shelves and steps, toward whispering paper, and a librarian who believes in returns without dates. The library breathes, but not in a way that startles. Doors open and release a soft lungful of paper and glue and the tidy dust of old ideas. The entry rug says, "Wipe your feet," in its firm weave, and your shoes answer with a little shrug of mud you didn't know you carried. Lamps glow like warm punctuation. The desk is rounded by elbows. A sign written in neat hand says, "Quiet is kindness here," and below in smaller letters, "So is help." It is not a large library. It does not need to be. The stacks are arranged with the logic of ease rather than the logic of geometry. A child could move through them and never feel lost. At the far end, a window tall enough to be a question lets moonlight in and makes silver out of dust that would be ordinary in sun. Somewhere, a dehumidifier purrs like an old cat. The floor knows where it squeaks and does so in the same spot each time as if to say hello. The librarian might be the same person who once stitched a sleeve at the marketplace, or might be their cousin, or might be someone you haven't met yet and somehow still know. They look up with a face that respects the time of night and does not make a show of how glad they are to see you. A small bell, all bells are small at this hour, sits near the edge of the desk. No one has rung it in years because no one has needed to. A hand-lettered card next to a jar of pencils says, "Return dates are guesses. Return kindnesses on time." Shelves hold books, and the books hold more than print. Some spines are smooth as river stones from years of being slid in and out. Some jackets have that crinkle that says someone cared enough to keep them clean and failed beautifully. There is a whole section of field guides that open to pages about birds that sleep on one leg, about mushrooms that glow faintly like a polite idea, about trees that drop cones shaped for pockets. There is a shelf labeled Recipes You Can Taste Without Cooking, and another called Maps of Things That Do Not Require Addresses. In the children's section, a rug draws a map of a town with roads and a pond and small houses. Toy cars live in a basket and go where small drivers want them to. The picture books are organized by a system no one writes down: animals, machines, boats, bedtime. The chapter books are sorted by courage and quiet. A few stuffed animals keep their vigil on a window seat and look as if they have learned every face in town by spending years being taken home for a week and then returned with stories that smell like other people's living rooms. There is an hour most nights, not on any schedule, when conversation is allowed, but only with the books. It is unofficial, and everyone understands. You choose one and carry it to a table that has been rubbed with lemon oil decade after decade. You open the book and ask it something in your head. You ask for a feeling, not a fact. The book answers by offering a sentence that makes your neck feel less tight. Or it answers by reminding you that a certain poet once said, "The thing you needed someone to say." Or it answers by sitting still under your hand and letting you remember the first person who read to you. That counts as an answer. The library keeps a small corner for unclaimed things, a mitten without its mate, a bookmark made from a movie ticket stub, a little notebook with lists embossed on the cover, and inside only the words "Milk Cord, remember to be nicer to future me," written twice with different pens. These things are not thrown away. They are allowed to gather a dignity that useful objects get when they are not being used and still intend to be. Up a narrow staircase is the listening room. It is only 3 chairs by a table and a record player that works, because everyone has agreed to be careful. The records are not many. There is a recording of rain on a porch roof. There is a man talking slowly about how to make things with your hands when your hands are younger than your want. There is a woman reading a recipe in a voice that makes you imagine the pie cooling, the window open, the sound of a road in the distance. People sit and put on headphones and look at nothing, and then take the headphones off and keep looking at nothing, kinder now. The reference desk has maps of the town from years that matter to anyone who asks. You can see how these streets bent before they were straightened, and how one footpath is so old it quietly insists on being a sidewalk now. There are phone books thick enough to be footstools and thin enough to be pamphlets, depending on which year you touch. The librarian knows what you need before you finish explaining, because needs announced at midnight are often alike. A little history, a little permission, a direction you are already walking in. There is a card catalog, old wood with small drawers and brass pulls, beautifully unnecessary in the computer age. Children love it because it opens, and adults love it because it opens onto memory. The cards are still there, typed, smudged, and amended in pencil. Some hold call numbers. Some hold notes like, "This one is good when you can't sleep." One card in the e-drawer, Echoes, says, "Ask the librarian for the jar." If you do, the librarian rises without comment and brings a small jar and sets it down. Inside is nothing obvious. You open it and hear, somehow, the exact sound of your own front door closing gently on a day when everyone you loved was safe inside. You put the lid back on carefully and hand it over as if it were heavy. The library keeps hours posted on the door for daytime. At night, it keeps the kind of hours that bend out of the way for people who knock softly and lean in. No one is turned away. Someone might be told to sit and breathe for 2 minutes while the librarian finishes labeling a box of donated paperbacks. And in those 2 minutes, a few pages are already read without being opened. The exit door has a sign above it that says, "Thank you for the noise you did not make," and below it, in smaller letters, "and for the stories you will bring back with you." You leave with a book you did not come for, a pamphlet printed long ago about making a kite from a newspaper, and a scrap of paper with the name of a song to look up when the sun returns. You promise to return the book when you are ready, which is the only due date that has ever worked in this town for the important things. The atlas draws the library with neat lines, windows glowing, and writes in the margin, "You may whisper here, even to yourself, especially to yourself." Outside, the night feels freshly folded. You hear far off a sound like laughter softened by wind and creaking wood. A carnival sound, but gentled, turned down to a bedtime setting. And because Gravity Falls loves a small surprise that asks nothing of you but presence, you follow it. By day, the fairgrounds are a square of flattened grass with chalk lines fading to ghosts. A gate remembers crowds with its chipped paint and proud hinge. At night, once in a while, when the stars have done their bright work and are content to be backdrop, the night carnival wakes, not with fireworks or brass, but the way a house wakes when a parent rises for water and does not turn on the kitchen light. String lights come on as if they have always been on and simply now decided to tell you. The Ferris wheel turns slowly, not because it must, but because circles are convinced by moonlight to be themselves. The seats are empty, and still someone has set a plaid blanket over one, a courtesy to the air. A hand-painted sign at the entrance reads, "Tickets not required. Time is enough." Underneath, someone has scribbled, and a sweater. Booths exist here in a different mood. The ring toss is set with bottles that murmur when rings land. A small clink, a yes, more than a point. The prizes are small. Folded maps to good naps, a button that says I stopped when it was still fun, a pencil already sharpened to the exact angle that makes lists best. Kids throw rings and say, "Ooh," in the particular way that means failure felt fine. Adults try once and then hand the rings to someone else because handing them over is the part they needed. The carousel's not flashy. Its animals are wood worn to a shine where hands have held over years. A bear with a blunt, friendly face. A horse with a dapple that looks like a question mark. A swan with a seat big enough for two. Music plays from a box that knows the difference between melody and bossiness. It loops the long way, around 3 or 4 songs that are cousins to lullabies. The carousel moves so slowly you could knit on it without losing your place. People do ride, and some do not, and both kinds are right. There is a tent where fortunes are not told. You step inside and see a table, a deck of cards with nothing printed on them, and a mirror that returns your face as it looks when it is thinking about people you love. The person inside wears a vest that has held up well and a smile that has held up better. They ask what you are hoping for and then listen as if listening were a trade, and they want it to be very fair. When you leave, you are given a small slip of paper that says, "Drink water. Call the person." Put your phone down outside the bedroom. You look at it and feel both teased and seen. Food exists at the night carnival, but it is kind about it. Popcorn is warm and throws off a few extra kernels for children to chase like moths. Cotton candy looks like fog decided to rest on a stick for 10 minutes and then disappear. Lemonade tastes the way yellow looks in July. There are also thermoses of tea for hands that want warmth as much as mouths want taste. No one upsells. Change is made with laughter and thanks. A game called Hold This For Me has only one rule. You are handed something, a softball, a jar of buttons, a small stone shaped like a heart by a river that never bragged about it, and you hold it for a count of 20, then pass it on. 20 is long enough to feel it in your hand and short enough to forget whether you are supposed to be good at this. At the end, you take nothing with you and somehow leave with less weight than you carried in. Beyond the rides, a wide boardwalk leads to nowhere on purpose. Along its edge, small stalls hold skills that are not otherwise practiced much. Look up and name 3 constellations will help. Write a postcard to yourself. We'll mail it when you forget you wrote it. Try on a hat you would never wear. No photos. Laughter lines and faces smooth out in these places. A person tries on a captain's hat and finds that they would like to steer something after all. A canoe or a day off, both acceptable. The night carnival keeps time kindly. No one shouts last call. The Ferris wheel slows to still as the moon decides it has been generous enough. Music shortens its loops and lands on a note that feels like a home porch. Booth lights blink once, not as a warning, but as a suggestion. People drift toward the gate with the same pace they had coming in. Children try very hard not to fall asleep on shoulders and then do, honorably. On a bench near the exit, a teenager sits with a paper crown that says ruler of nothing and loving it. They are smiling in a way that people smile when relief reached them. Next to them, 2 old friends split a funnel cake and call it a tie. A volunteer with a broom finds a sweep that does not erase the night so much as give it a tidy ending. Someone writes on the chalkboard by the gate, "Thank you," and the letters look like everyone's handwriting at once. The atlas draws the night carnival without more detail than needed. Wheel, carousel, strings of small bulbs, a tent with its flap open. In the margin, the note is a quiet one. Fun that doesn't cost tomorrow. You feel taller and softer at the same time. There is one more page before the lake, and it pulls you like sleep pulls lids. A flotilla of lanterns and the oldest wish of all, light on water, moving away, then back again. The lake holds the town the way a lap holds book. It is not large, it is large enough. Pines lean toward it and see themselves smoothed and a little taller. Rocks know their reflections better than their faces. On the shore, the grass grows in bands, trampled, willing, shy. By day, the water is for skimming stones and deciding which cloud looks like a goose. By night, sometimes, it becomes a mirror for something everyone wants to look at together, light leaving gently. Lantern nights are not scheduled on a calendar anyone keeps in a kitchen. People seem to know anyway. A breeze arrives that is less about weather and more about invitation. The sky clears to the kind of blue that can carry stars without strain. Houses let go of their people, and they come with boxes and strings and careful hands. On the lake's edge, tables appear with paper bags, small candles, sand in a bucket, and matches counted out by someone who counts by awareness rather than number. The lanterns are simple: bag, sand for ballast, candle in the middle. The art is in the writing. Some people write names, plain and big and not ashamed. Some draw shapes that look like memories had their edges rounded by time. Dock planks, a dog's ears, the outline of a sweater sleeve being tugged. Some write words that are not for reading. Thank you, sorry, stay, go, see you, be well. Children make faces with triangle noses and then soften them with more lines until the faces look like the night they are about to meet. There are rules that are not scoldy. Keep matches low and patient. Use enough sand that your lantern minds the wind. Whatever you send, you must be able to let drift. There is also a station with long sticks, with small cradles on the ends, for pushing a lantern off a reed if it decides to reconsider shore. People practice once with an unlit bag and feel braver. The first lantern goes out not because someone wants to be first, but because someone has finished writing. It sits on the skin of water, learning how to be a floating thing. Then another and another, a slow, stuttering procession that becomes a stream, then a scatter, then an arrangement with no leader. The candles inside are small, but water magnifies light the way love does. A hush falls that is not demanded. It simply fits. Boats move in respectful arcs farther out. Oars dip without plash. A dog on a bow stands with paws wide and looks official. On shore, people speak lower than the frogs. A teenager points out a lantern and says that one, and the group around them nods, understanding without being told. This is not wishing the way coins in a fountain are wishing. This is the kind of wishing that is a cousin to remembering. You can send something and not expect it back and still be connected to it. The lake is good at this. It takes the light and slurs it a little with ripple and breathes it back to you as a line on your palm you hadn't noticed. Sometimes a lantern tips and drinks. People watch not with panic, but with recognition. A hand reaches with the stick and helps if help is needed. A lantern that goes out is not a failure. Someone says, "We meant the letting more than the light, and it is exactly right." Matches scratch. Another bag glows. Small talks happen that are as much silence as words. Do you remember? I still have the "he would have loved." That smell is cinnamon from the marketplace. Tomorrow I'll... In between, the lake keeps catching and sending and catching. A breeze moves and the flotilla drifts as one towards the far cove where reeds stand like choir. This part always looks planned and never is. People lean forward, not to intervene, but to witness the moment when what they sent becomes the lake's. It reaches the reeds and slows and spreads, little lights nested among stalks. The cove brighter for a while than the path back to the parking lot will be. The night holds its breath. Somewhere the bell tower does not ring in approval. There is one brave lantern that somehow heads the other direction. Children notice and cheer in whispers. It noses back toward shore as if it forgot something important, and the shore greets it like a late guest who makes the joke the party needed. Someone retrieves it carefully and reads the writing on the paper. Remember to take the pie out at 10. Laughter bobs like a buoy. The lantern, relit, goes back again, this time sure. Later, after the last matches have been tucked into a tin and the last grainy paper bag has been folded into a recycling box, people stand a little longer than necessary and look at the dark where the lights were. They let their eyes learn to see without help again. There are embraces that are both hello and goodbye. Kids ask if the lake eats the light and are given answers both honest and kind. It eats the part that needs to be eaten and keeps the part that needs to be kept. Someone says, "Let's come back." Next time the wind says please, everyone agrees to listen for the wind. The way back is a path of sound. Gravel under shoe, the steady beating of crickets, the far familiar mutter of a road with a patient speed limit. People carry the smell of candle smoke on their sleeves, and when they hang their jackets later, the closets will be kinder places for it. Windows catch the last glints and pretend to hold them until morning. On a porch, a lantern made of thick glass is turned down and the flame slumps to a blue dot and then becomes nothing you can see. The atlas renders the lake as a neat oval with a scalloped edge where reeds stand. The lanterns are drawn with careful dots, some clustered, some solitary heading stubbornly for shore. In the margin, the note says, "You can let go without losing. Water knows how." You run your finger along the page and feel the texture of the paper change in a way your mind calls ripple even though your finger knows better. Behind you on the table, the atlas looks a little thicker, as if the night has tucked more into it than paper can reasonably hold. Ahead there are still pages, still corners of gravity falls that only night introduces properly. For now, you close the cover halfway, like a door left on the latch in a house where everyone is asleep, and everyone is welcome to wake when they're ready. The attic is a room that knows how to keep secrets without ever feeling heavy. Its roofline bows like a shoulder you can lean on, and the single window, the one everyone remembers, sits in the center like a calm eye. On summer nights, that window opens with a squeak that sounds like a yes, and the air climbs in, carrying pine, river, and a thin ribbon of town light smell. Warm bread from the diner, machine oil from the gas station, the sweet dust of the library stacks 2 streets over. The floorboards speak the language of small creaks, each one meaning, "Here I am," rather than "pay attention." And the rafters keep their patient, angled silence. 2 beds once faced each other here like friendly boats. Quilts folded and refolded, took turns being mountains, tents, shields, or simply warmth. A string of lights hung low along a beam and learned to glow in 3 moods. Bright for drawing maps in felt pen, softer for reading by shared flashlight, faintest for talk that doesn't need answers. The ceiling, slanted enough to bump and low enough to touch, earned a sky of its own. Constellations drawn with glow stickers and pencil dots, and the little smudges of erased names where a better name arrived later. Not all the constellations looked like anything in particular. That was fine. Up here you can say a cluster of dots is a sweater or a llama or a question mark, and be exactly right. On the trunk by the window, always a trunk, the kind that rattles gently with its own history, lived a working pile of things that meant we're trying. A magnifying glass with a scratch down one side, a roll of tape fuzzy with lint, a notebook with rain-wrinkled corners, a jar of lemonade with a lid that never went on tight, a wood pencil sharpened to a point that said, "I will break if you press too hard. Please don't." The attic taught a kind of patience that feels like fun. When a moth tapped the lampshade, it wasn't a distraction. It was a cousin to the stars outside, another tiny light trying to be near your light for a bit. Sometimes the window became a telescope. You only had to lean your elbows on the sill and put your chin on your fists and let your breath fog the glass. The forest edge was a darker dark. The bell tower clock faced a round coin someone had left for safekeeping. The lake a suggestion, until the lantern nights came, and then it was a quiet city of moving dots. In that pane of glass, brave plans were planned. Some got drawn in the notebook. Some got folded into the quilts and slept on until morning, told everyone which ideas were for now and which were for later. The attic was not a judge. It was a room that kept both kinds comfortably. Rain made the best music here. On those nights, the roof turned drummer, and the gutter played a careful bass line. And somewhere a draft found a bottle to hum across. The stickers on the ceiling did their dim, kind work. A page turned, ink bled a little at the corner where a droplet had found its way to the margin. Someone sketched a creature they hadn't seen yet. Antlers that branched like rivers, eyes like polished stones, hooves that barely touched the ground, and wrote in the neatest letters they could manage, gentle. Names were guesses until the forest introduced itself. Up here, guesses were welcome. When the sky was clear, star mapping became a cooperative sport. A hand pointed. The other hand held a sketchbook. A voice said, "Left of the crooked W, know your other left." And there it was, a line you hadn't noticed connecting 2 points you'd known all along. That's how a lot of discoveries worked in this town. You already held both ends. The attic simply showed you the string. Some nights, the map on the page matched the map above. Other nights, the map in your chest did. Both were valid charts. Morning left its calling cards here in small ways. Dust made the thin beam through the window look like a staircase of tiny worlds. The quilt warmed one stripe of floor before the rest of the room agreed to wake. A bead of dried glue on the trunk edge shone like amber, holding one pine needle from a walk days ago. The attic forgave the mess of a good night's work. It liked the look of taped corners, penciled arrows, the words check later circled 3 times. Even now, when the house sleeps its deep seasonal sleep, the attic holds the shape of those nights. If you sit on the floor and lean your back to the wall, you can feel it. The faded echo of laughter that wasn't trying to be loud. The rustle of sweater sleeves as someone reached for the next page. The friendly thump of a knee against the trunk. The whisper of a conversation that wanted to know what else might be out there and what was right here, and how to be kind to both. On the atlas page, the attic is drawn as a triangle with a small square window and 2 tiny rectangles labeled beds. A pencil comet leaves the window and arcs to a cluster of dots labeled our own constellation. In the margin, the small, careful note says, "When you don't know a star's name, give it a kind job." You turn the page toward the forest's larger shapes, the ones that looked frightening from a distance and turned out to be enormous, careful neighbors up close. They are the hush behind the trees, the taller shadows that remember to move slowly. By day, they are rumor folded into the texture of bark and rock. By night, when the forest lowers its voice for the hour between owls' calls, the giants make their rounds the way a town elder checks porches before a storm. Not to intrude, only to be sure. One wears a coat of moss that tufted up all on its own, as if the forest decided to knit him something without measuring first. His shoulders are the width of 2 doorways, and his hands are as large as stove lids. He keeps his fingers spread when he walks near saplings, and he places his feet where last year's leaves can cushion each step. When he pauses, the pines lean as though they were listening to an old friend finish a story they already know well. Another, taller still, is made by the joining of 3 old trunks, braided by time and wind, until they learn to carry one canopy together. From the path, you might see him as only a trick of moonlight. From the clearing, you realize that the sway you took for separate branches belongs to one body practicing balance. He tends the wind the way some tend fire, lifting it with a slow arm to a branch that needs drying, lowering it where a nestling might be startled. Stone has its own giant. Imagine a hillside that decided to sit up politely. Lichens freckle his cheek. A thin fall of water draws a silver line down the slope of his shoulder after rain. He turns so rarely that generations of foxes have learned a route across his forearm from den to stream. their paws fitting the grooves made by their grandparents' paws. When he turns, and he does, the forest hears it more than sees it. A comfortable settling, like a house, shifting itself by a thumb's breadth deeper into the earth. There is a tall deer not counted with ordinary deer, an elk who wears the night like velvet, and whose antlers hold small constellations of beetle lamps. In drawings, he is often shown with eyes like lantern glass and knees like oiled hinges. In life, he is quieter than pictures allow. He steps into meadows only when meadows are calm. He rejects the drama of being rare. Children who have seen his shadow cross their curtained windows pretend they were dreaming and keep the good part. Even the creek makes a giant now and then. After floods, a tangle of alders and uprooted trunks knits itself into a moving body that floats a season down and moves on, pronouncing nothing as it goes, carrying lost twigs back to the places that lost them. Raccoons ride it as if they meant to, then hop off where their favorite log happens to meet the bank. People whisper other gentler legends. A woman who is mostly wind and only sometimes seen, wrapping herself around orchards to keep late frost off blossoms. A bear who sits at the edge of lantern nights and, when small children fall asleep on blankets, watches with the patience of a grandparent until each is carried home. The atlas does not argue with these. It leaves a soft-edged space at the page's bottom for rumors that make people kinder while they wait to be true. What do the giants do? They prune the forest in the gentlest way, an elbow here to ease a heavy branch's angle, a giant's breath there to shake loose the cones that meant to fall. They herd fog out of the road on mornings that require safe driving. They block without show the path of wind when it gets ideas about snapping. They pick up the occasional hat and lift it into a low branch where its owner can find it. Once on a storm night, when the bell tower counted the distance between flashes, a moss-shouldered hand cupped a robin's nest against the sideways rain until the worst of it passed. No one but the forest watched. That was enough. If you meet one, and they prefer not to be met, there are manners. Do not point. Lift your open hand and let your palm find the air in front of you in a greeting older than fingers. Do not run. The forest floor would rather not be asked to take the jab of your heel just then. Do not look a long time. It's tiring to be looked at. If a shadow pauses near you, and your hair lifts and then settles as if a large, warm stove had passed by, that was a giant. Say thank you in your chest, where good thanks start. You can see their work after they go. A branch that used to scratch a window is made to curve like a question instead. A log that would have rotted across a well-loved path has been moved into a posture where mushrooms can minister to it faster. A single pine cone placed neatly on a stump, its points all unbitten, its seeds still asleep, waits for someone who needs a pocket weight. Forest tidying continues at a scale too large to notice and so easy to love. They are also teachers in a curriculum nobody wrote down. A child sees the elk in the meadow and learns what rare can mean without meaning fragile. A night walker hears a hillside settle and remembers that big things don't have to make big noises. A person who has been brave for too many days in a row stands under a canopy that moves in long, slow arcs and is excused from quickness for the evening. In the atlas, the giants are a set of light pencil lines. The moss coat is drawn as a textured shading. The elk's antlers are stars with no named pattern. The stone giant is a contour like any hill, until you notice the suggestion of an ear. In the margin, size is another form of softness when it learns not to hurry. You trace the lines and feel your shoulders lower without instructions, then turn the page to smaller mysteries. letters and sounds and signs that town and forest tuck everywhere, not to test you, only to sing softly and see if you'll hum back. Gravity Falls writes to itself in quiet alphabets. The diner chalkboard, wiped each night, keeps a ghost of yesterday's special, just enough to read pie between the new loops of pie. A flyer in the market says Concert Friday, and if held at the right angle to the light, also says Bring Sweater. A stack of library due date cards shares a pattern in their stamped holes that spells rest if you stand on tiptoe and squint with a playful heart. Some codes here are sturdy things, older than anyone's memory. A row of painted stones along the river path, each small dot in a different color, telling long ago hikers which spur climbs and which one curves back to water. Some are brand new, a teenager's string bracelet. Blue, blue, green, blue, yellow, matching the order of houses on their best friend's street, so they can count steps and not be nervous on the first walk home in the dark. The point is not secrecy, it's companionship. Puzzles are how the town says, stay a while, we like how your mind moves. There is a classic Gravity Falls cipher that uses the alphabet's edges. A simple substitution made friendlier by lemon juice. People write notes in ordinary letters, but between the lines is a second layer, words coaxed into visibility with a warm mug pressed over the page or sunbeam borrowed for a minute. The heat pulls up pale letters that were always there. Children think it's magic, and adults admit it feels like magic even when they know which molecules are doing what. The hidden message is never mean. Often it says exactly what the plain one does, only a little gentler. See you at the bridge becomes, I'll wait as long as it takes. Bring the red sweater becomes wear whatever says you today. Don't be late becomes, I want more time with you, that's all. The diner keeps a menu with prices that change according to the day's kindness. The code lives in a corner by the coffee pot, 4 sugar packets standing in a small glass, the pale blue packet's position telling the short order cook whether to ladle extra gravy for the older man at the counter, whether to tuck an extra pancake under the top one for the kid who is trying not to be a kid about it, whether to make the coffee the way they like it, not the way it's served. If the blue packet leans left, the cook knows who can't afford bacon today. If it leans right, they know who needs bacon anyway. At the bell tower, the caretaker leaves a note in the stairwell notebook on fog mornings. A tiny, consistent flourish under the date. That curl means, for those who read it, don't drive the ridge road. The turn after the old sign is blind in this weather, not law, just care. It's enough to reroute a handful of people and to keep someone's pitcher of lemonade from missing the person it's meant for. Seuss, whose hands fix nearly everything by listening to how it broke, keeps a drawer of spare screws arranged in a pattern only he understands. A rattling dot matrix of when to quit for the day and when to push through because the fix wants to land before lunch. If you ask him, he'll explain it. If you don't, he'll still share the part that keeps you safe. This one bites if you tighten it too much, because his code's main job is kindness, not cleverness. Children make their own systems. Chalk hopscotch grids become maps with river squares and bridge squares, and cloud you can sit on squares. A sister draws 3 stars near the front walk each morning for the brother who needs rituals. If the 3rd star has a tail, it means I saved you the last piece of toast. Punky teenagers, punks with ideal hearts, organize a post-it network for bad weather days. A square on a mailbox lid means the walk to your door is salted. A square on a side gate means I put the potted plant under the porch for you. A square on a fence post means I saw your cat, 10 tenths doing cat business. Inside the library, the card catalog hides a treasure for anyone who pulls the E drawer for echoes and thumbs to near the end. A card there, typewritten, but amended with pencil, says, "To hear what loved ones sound like when you remember them kindly, ask for the jar. The jar holds nothing to the eye. You open it. The room inside your head fills with a voice that isn't a recording so much as a feeling. The way a parent said your name when you were almost asleep. The way a friend told a joke only you two liked. The way someone long gone cleared their throat before disagreeing in a way that made you feel smarter. No code, just recall, concentrated by care. Still, the card is a key, and turning keys is satisfying. The town ciphers love pie. This is known. Text on pie boxes in neat block letters spells blackberry, peach, apple, but the stamp's ink changes shade in a sequence that goes with the bell tower pendulum. Dark, light, light, dark, dark, meaning eat while warm with someone else or save a slice for the morning person in your life. The bakery clerk points at nothing and everything. This one wants to be shared. That is code and also instruction. Following it is easy. If you want to write the town back, you can. Fold a note into the crack under the wooden bridge. Nothing too private. Just the water is extra pretty today, and know a teenager who reads everything will find it and smile. Draw a tiny heart with a chalk nub next to the second plank on the library steps, and someone on their way to return a mystery novel will look down and feel chosen. Learn the simple substitution for a good night that a handful of neighbors add to their window lamps. 2 flickers, 1 long, and flicker back. The atlas prints a small decoder wheel at the page's corner, nothing fancy. 2 circles of letters, 1 shifted by 3. It also prints, in very small type, a key that is not a key. If a puzzle can make a person feel safe, it's a good puzzle. If it can't, perhaps it belongs on paper and not in people. You spin the paper wheel with your fingertip once, twice, then turn the page to the biggest code of all, the one every town keeps by living. How it sounds when it sleeps, and how much it tells you by not saying very much. 3 in the morning is the town's long blink. Not quite closed, not quite open. Streetlights keep their soft cones. Moths hold their nightly parliament with no chairperson and perfect order. The bell tower doesn't chime. It doesn't need to. It has already said enough simply by being there, a round statement of "we are keeping time for you. You don't have to look." On Main, a single neon sign gives a low, steady hum. Not the sharp buzz of evening when the coffee is fresh and the diner's door does 100 small bells between 6 and 10, but the humming you hear when you press a seashell to your ear and call it ocean. A sugar shaker stands in sentry pose on every wiped table, and the pie case sleeps with its light off. No need to be tempting right now. Even craving takes a nap. Farther along, a laundromat spins in slow unison. A rotating lullaby drum behind glass. Someone left a note clipped to a machine with a clothespin. "Take these out if I'm not back by 3:15. Thanks, night neighbor." The basket underneath holds exactly 4 socks that have no mates yet and look content about it. A radio on the counter whispers a station that calls itself The Bridge, songs that know how to cross from one day to the next. On the edge of town, the baker is already ahead of everyone. They move the way people move who have learned to let heat do the hard work and to help it along. The ovens give off a burr of low thunder. Flour fog makes halos in the beam from a single tilted bulb. A stack of racks waits like a receiving line. A calendar over the sink has pen marks where orders live, but the baker also knows without looking who will ask for an extra roll at 7:40, because their cousin surprised them with a car ride at 7:15. Back in the neighborhoods, porches do porch things. A rocking chair holds the shape of someone who worried earlier and then decided to sleep. Boots by a mat stand like old soldiers. A motion light clicks on for a cat with important business, then clicks off as if agreeing that secrecy serves the mission. Somewhere, a wind chime with one tube missing sounds better than it did when it was complete. Night workers keep the thin threads that daylight assumes will be there. A snowplow driver in winter, a water plant caretaker in every season, the person who checks the school bus's tires with a rubber mallet and knows each vehicle's sound by ear. Tonight, it is the gas station attendant sweeping with slow, precise arcs, coaxing gravel toward neatness. They pause to circle 2 crossword clues and leave the pen for the morning person, who will enjoy filling in the obvious ones fast. The library's windows are black rectangles, but if you look long enough, you can see the faintest hint of a desk lamp inside. The night librarian sits with a mug and stamps the word withdrawn on books that have finished their rounds and will become craft paper or wrapping or puppet fodder for the school's next play. Each stamp meets paper with a pleasant non-event of a sound. The clock over the desk is 5 minutes slow on purpose. People who come in late at night deserve 5 minutes of grace baked into the walls. The river, always working, declares itself with the smallest possible argument against stillness. It murmurs without needing to be listened to. A tire swing on a maple makes the tiniest circle at the end of its rope and then returns to zero. A fox crosses a road that holds no cars, and the reflective dots on a stop sign wink as if they like being winked back at by small, clever eyes. You can hear the town breathe if you stand between the bakery and the bell tower, and inhale from the far highway as a truck rolls past the exit, and exhale from the dryer vents along the alley. A shared sigh when the fridge compressors in 6 houses click on together 2 blocks over. It's not mystic, and it is. A place is its machines, its animals, its people, and the air that learns all their habits. Email flows in dark rooms where people forgot to close laptops. Messages pile up in draft folders from earlier evenings. Do you have 5 minutes tomorrow? And messages are sent now, too. No, go back to sleep. I found it. It was in the glove box. Screens dim. Someone's phone, set on a dresser, glows long enough to paint a circle of light on a ceiling medallion, then goes blind again. The ceiling keeps a memory of that brief moon. If you walk, you are not out of place. Your steps will meet a few others. A dog walker with a reflective leash, a nurse with a quiet backpack, a baker's helper, hands already dusted, laughing at something the baker said about dough behaving like friendship. You will nod in that particular way night walkers nod. We are both okay, and we are letting each other be. You will pass a window where a lamp is left on for a teenager, and even if you once were that teenager, you will feel the wish land. May that lamp's light land exactly where it's meant to. At the edge of the lake, the reeds keep watch. The last lantern ash from 3 nights ago has gone to silt. Frogs practice a backbeat you could set a life to. The dock boards are cold if you touch them and warm in their memory of feet. A fish turns and makes a coin out of 1 star. The coin sinks and buys the night another quiet minute. Back in the house where you began, whichever house that is for you, the doorknob is cooler than your palm. The rug gives. The hallway accepts your quiet. You pour a glass of water in the kitchen without turning on the light because you know where everything is. A chair takes your weight as if it had been preparing all day to do so. The clock over the sink, with its slightly happy tick, says nothing accusatory about the hour. When people talk about home, they often mean the daytime hours, breakfast noises, coat rack tangle, door slam rush. But home also means this: the recognizable shadow of a fern on the wall, the smell of paper and laundry soap and wood, the soft, exact sound of a cupboard closing when its hinge has been recently oiled because someone remembered to do that. Towns have this too. Gravity Falls at 3 a.m. is home as a whole thing. The atlas draws a small map of the hour. Icons, a coffee mug with steam at the bakery, a tiny broom at the station, a washer door with damp stars, a foxtail like a brushstroke. The river is a simple line, its edge shaded just enough to mean motion. In the margin, the note says, "Every place breathes. If you listen for the exhale, you will sleep easier. You smooth the page once, and the paper smooths you back." Then, with that particular easy care one learns in this town, you turn to the next chapter when you want. Or you close the atlas and let the town keep watching the hour until your own rest reaches you. Every year, the sky remembers to loosen its pockets. The hour comes without fanfare, announced only by a hush that moves across the hills like a hand smoothing a blanket. Porch lights click out by agreement. Quilts are carried to lawns, to docks, to the flat roofs of garages that were measured once with care, and then learned the weight of summer. A thermos passes from hand to hand. Somewhere a radio that usually plays talk shows is turned down until it is only a wristwatch with opinions. The town looks up. At first there is nothing to see but the regulars, a crooked W over the pines, the slow cart of stars hauling the night from one corner to the other, the small, faithful smear of the Milky Way, which here looks less like milk and more like flour, something that will dust your shoulders if you stand under it long enough. Then, quick as kindness, a bright dash, then another. A child says there and points in the wrong direction and is right anyway because the pointing is the point. Next, learn again how to be long. The first 10 streaks feel like rumor. After that, the sky stops pretending it is a ceiling and becomes a river that runs above you. There are traditions. Some families lie heads in, feet out, a spoke of people around a pie tin of cookies. Some bring journals and tally the count, as if the numbers could measure the tenderness they feel. Some say nothing for the first hour and then say everything very quietly. Someone always reads the same 2 names into the dark before the first streak. Names no one writes down and everyone remembers. And when the light arrives, it feels like an answer that does not cancel the question. The meteors are generous with meaning and ask nothing back. They do not care if you call them stones or wishes or old pieces of sky with someplace else to be. They do not mind that most of us do not know their parent comets or the precise angles of their entry. They give a performance for free at the rate of heartbeats, and when they tire, they rest behind the atmosphere where the cold is crystal and patient. The show favors people who can linger and still leaves a surprise for the person who can only stand outside for 3 minutes with a mug and a blanket over their shoulders. Gravity Falls is a town for lingerers and for people who are trying to learn. A meteor skims the black and is gone, and yet you are not empty where it was. The line stays inside your head where you can draw it again with your eyes closed. Children learn to keep their gasps to themselves for the sake of the next watcher beside them, to share air the way you share crayons, letting the colors pass back and forth without putting your name on them. A teenager who had planned to be bored lets their mouth go soft. An elder who has seen 60 of these nights resettles their spine and says, almost to the grass, I had forgotten how they turn the dark into a friendly thing. A low cloud wanders over like a late guest who has not read the invitation. It covers the sky exactly where you were looking. You do not groan. You turn your eyes a little to the left, and the meteors oblige by breaking to that side for a while. The town's luck has never been dramatic. It is cooperative. Dogs remember to lie down instead of pacing. Someone remembers to take the pie out at 10. The oven light makes a small square on a kitchen wall and looks like a star that has learned manners. If you keep looking long enough, your eyes begin to see faint trails too, little runnels of light that would be enough even without the grand streaks. They look like pencil lines drawn by a careful hand and then blown on to set the graphite. You understand why people here name constellations after actions instead of heroes. The ladder, the cup, the stitch. The nap between two brighter points called the breath. Tonight a new star falls in a curve that matches the bell tower's pendulum, and for a second you expect to hear a chime. You do not hear it. You do not need to. Bill Cipher. Sometimes gets a mention on these nights, not as a threat, only as a geometry that the sky also knows. Triangles, eyes, the angles that happen when you have been thinking too long and need a nap. Someone says he is a fallen star who forgot how to land kindly. Someone else points up at a dash that breaks in 3 pieces and says, maybe he learned. The night accepts both opinions and hands out more light. After midnight, the meteors thicken. Counting becomes a sieve you cannot keep up with. People stop trying to put everything in order and let the order be what it is, a grace that repeats and never bores itself. If you listen, not to the sky, which is busy doing its work, but to the town, you hear all the small human sounds that protect the hour from solemnity. A sniffle, a zipper, a whisper of someone opening a third blanket, the scrape of a thermos cup against its lid, 2 hands finding each other inside a sleeve, laughter that starts quiet because it must, and then continues quiet because it has learned what quiet can hold. The river reflects a fraction of the show and calls it plenty. The dockboards take on a cool that feels like honesty. The reeds remember to sway in place of applause. Somewhere, a teenager with a camera on a tripod tries to catch the long exposure and instead catches the shiver of their own hand. And the photo will be perfect, and they will not know it until later, when the blur looks exactly like how the night felt. When the hour is almost done, the town does not get up all at once. Sheets of people fold slowly. Grass makes its little sticky signatures on bare calves. Someone who brought a pillow lends it to someone who did not. Children are carried carefully, heads tucked, the angle of their necks arranged so morning will not complain. Cars start infrequently and without competition. One porch light returns to say, welcome back. The bell tower does not ring, but something in your chest answers the way a bell would. On the atlas page, the meteors are drawn with pencil as if the artist did not want to scratch the paper. The river's line is doubled for shimmer. In the margin, a note. When light leaves quickly, let your eyes remember it slowly. You sit with the page a minute longer than necessary, then turn, because there is a wooden bridge ahead and a long, carved record of people who crossed before you and said something quietly to the planks. The bridge does not think of itself as symbolic. It is as practical as a handshake and as honest as a plank. But the town has made it a place where meanings come to be measured by footsteps, and the bridge has not argued. It's an old span, wood on wood, bolts in places where someone in overalls told a student to hold still while they tightened. It hums a little when the river is high and deepens its voice when the river is low. It has a long memory and a plain welcome. People carved things here long before anyone said not to, and then the town understood it was the right kind of writing and quietly allowed it. The carvings are not declarations so much as receipts, proof that a person was brave enough to leave a mark and gentle enough to leave only a small one. Initials inside a square that looks a lot like a house, a date with the month spelled out as if the weather itself mattered, a small pine, a fish, a heart that learned over the years to be drawn with rounded corners because sharp ones splinter. Under the top rail runs a whispered book of promises. Call you when I get there. Try again tomorrow. Bring back the spoon. Forgive. There are jokes left here too, because the bridge has taught the town that laughter travels well over water, an empire true in a tidy scrawl. This side slightly wiser with an arrow pointing east. Duck. And below it another hand. No actual ducks. On sunny days, children stop in the middle and throw leaves to see which wins. On cold mornings, the boards give a little and then accept boots without complaint. In spring, the bridge smells like winter, making room for wet. In late summer, it smells like sap saying thank you to heat. If you stand with your palms on the top rail long enough, it will give you a low humming you can feel through your skin. A tune so simple you could sing it without voice. A pattern of weight, a brief roll of joints, the long practice of holding. At one end of the bridge is a small bench that faces sideways toward nothing in particular. This is where people sit who are not crossing yet. Crossing sometimes needs a moment to choose its own timing. The bench keeps a ledger of sighs and of quiet, triumphant exhales, the kind you do when the hard part happened, and you are on the other side and only just noticing. Someone once carved a tiny door at the bench's base, a door a mouse might use. It opens on a hinge no one can see and closes with a felted click. Children knock and wait. Some swear they hear an answer. The adults learn to wait too. The bridge has a second job nobody talks about. It holds the sound of feet for people who miss other feet. There is a time after midnight when the planks recall the day and let the day's footsteps run again, very lightly, so the person leaning on the rail can count them and say, that was mine at noon, and that was hers at 4, and that was the way he always walked, like he had all the time in the world and none to spare. It does not make anyone sad, it makes them held. The river knows and keeps its own voice down then. Sometimes the town decides to use the bridge as a pier for a celebration nobody declared. Lanterns, of course. Or a violinist who says they are only practicing and plays the exact amount of a song people can carry back to their dishes and their couches. Or chalk poems that start on one side and finish on the other, so that someone must come and go to read the last line. I crossed here today and found I was already myself. Chalk learns to be brave on wood. Rain learns to be gentle on chalk. Teenagers leave brave carvings that look like they mean forever and discover later that forever can be grateful and brief. The bridge keeps the initials anyway and lets moss make a tenderness of them. Once a year, a small crew brings sandpaper and lemon oil and the kind of patient time that turns maintenance into affection. They do not erase the record. They listen for splinters and teach them how to be smooth again. Volunteers bring cookies. Someone sets a thermos on the rail, and the bridge warms under it as if it had hands. If you need to cross but cannot yet, you can still come to the center and let the town's two halves hold you, like the split pages of a book. Left is a set of roofs and porches. Right is a curtain of pines with the river stitched at its hem. Face either way. Say what you need to say in your chest. Look down at the water. The water is going where it goes and does not make a plan for you. It is the best listener the town keeps on retainer. On the atlas page, the bridge is drawn with careful lines, the planks indicated by pencil hatch, the rail by a single dark stroke. The carves are dots, too small to read, but somehow readable anyway. In the margin, when you cross, take your time. When you pause, take your time. You touch the page where the bench sits and feel the sense of waiting that is not delay, the kind of waiting a door does when it is half open and happy to be. Then you turn, because somewhere beyond the pines, the ocean is working its old arithmetic, and there is a lantern swinging from a ship's hook, and two brothers are learning how to be together in weather. The ocean begins far inland, in a sink filling for dishes, in a kettle steaming for tea. in a child's bucket that carried lake water from here to there until the arms got tired and the bucket was half empty and half triumph. But the first true sight of it from Gravity Falls is always a surprise. The road lifts a little. The pines make a proper frame, like sleeves rolled above wrists. And then, suddenly, there is a long, moving flatness that is not flat at all. It breathes. It remembers the moon. It speaks in 1,000 identical voices that are only identical from far away. People go to the ocean for reasons they cannot say without turning to look at it while they are saying them. To test a courage they already have. To wash a worry they cannot scrub. To see distance graded on a curve that is good for the eyes. To say a name out where it cannot bounce back sharply off walls. To meet boats, which are houses that practice leaving. The brothers brought a boat. Not the kind that bosses waves, not the kind with engines that sound like arguments, but a hull with stories in its ribs and a deck that a person could kneel on without apology. Lantern on the hook, tools in a chest with oil-rolled rags, thermos charts, a length of rope with the places already worn where hands should know to hold. The boat took the water the way a person takes a compliment they have learned to accept. Slightly sideways at first, then right in the center, then with a nod that stands taller than refusal. They set off when the wind said yes, and stayed when the wind said wait. The ocean taught a tempo that maps cannot show. Days where the water was a table of green glass set perfectly by the weather. Days where the water was an unmade bed, and the work was to tuck it and smooth it with the bow, inch by inch, in the direction that would not break a thing. The lantern swung. The rope creaked. The boat learned the two men who walked on it, how one was a compass that preferred to be asked rather than read, how the other was a journal that had space left and welcomed ink. They learned each other again, this time without rooms between. At night, away from shorelight, the sky lowers to a distance where you could touch it with a halyard. The ocean takes the meteor show and stretches it across a horizon too long to hold in the head. Stars double themselves in the long black. When there is no moon, the path is still visible. Phosphorescence answering each slice of the bow with a scribble of light that says, here, here, here. A hand over the side gathers the smallest lamps in the world and lets them fall again. The ocean makes its own lantern nights and releases them on every wake. The brothers spoke less than people think. They pointed. They adjusted course. They said the names of knots, like prayers and like jokes. They ate quietly and well. They repaired bulky things at patient speeds. They watched weather and practiced being in it instead of being against it. A fight, when it came, was as brief as a gust and as honest. Sorries learned to angle between them that felt more like a sail flattening toward work than like a flag lowered. Laughter carried farther at sea, so they rationed it in a way that never felt like withholding. On land, the town kept a calendar of their return with the most harmless superstition. A jar at the bakery counter with a note tucked inside. A line that moved one day to the right with each dawn. Lantern in the window tonight. People read it and did not ask for details. The jar made coins appear from nowhere. The bills put themselves under the jar with shy corners peeking. When the brothers came in, smelling of salt and work, the jar was quietly heavier than before. Children came to the shore to collect proofs. Shells with holes that knew how to hold string. Glass rounded milky by years inside the mouth of wave. Stones flat as good thoughts. A length of kelp that looked like a ribbon that might name something. The ocean offered gifts the way an ant does. Things nobody needs and everyone keeps. Adults came to practice leaving troubles on logs and then taking only what they could carry back without spilling. The ocean liked both kinds of visitors. It licked the marks off the sand each evening without grudges. There were fog days when the horn was not scold but comfort. Sound went out in careful pushes and came back with an answer that was not words and still said everything important. You are not alone in this milk. On those days, the lantern circle felt like a room, and being a room on water is a holy task. Inside that circle, coffee. Inside that circle, a story about a storm 20 years old told again, and drying further at the edges each time. Inside that circle, the quiet work of being alive within reach of someone who knows your weather. Sometimes the brothers ran parallel to the shore for longer than necessary just to see the line of trees repeat itself. The town tiny but discernible. Warehouse, diner roof, bell tower face like a thumbprint on the horizon. Crossing the river mouth, they waved even if no one could see them. When they turned into harbor, the boat sat back like a dog recognizing its porch. The dock took their weight the way the bridge takes news, steadily. Hands met rope. Rope met cleat. Hello was made of fewer syllables than usual and felt just as big. A person who has learned the ocean's tempo often becomes softer on land. They make tea and wait for the water without checking the clock. They pause in doorways for wind to talk first. They carry their own weather report in their shoulders and adjust before the storm arrives or decide not to call it a storm. The brothers walked like that when they came up the road. The town eased around them in a way towns learn to do when they like who people are after a journey. At a table by the window, any window will do, the atlas lies open to a page that is mostly color, blue upon blue, a swath of thin gray near shore, a dotted line out and back like stitches someone made with heavy thread and careful fingers. A little drawing of a lantern swings over the margin. There is a note in the same small, deliberate hand. Waves are only the ocean practicing breathing where you can see it. You touch the penciled wake with a fingertip and feel steadied by emotion that has been happening for longer than your need to be steadied. Then you close the atlas a little, not because the journey is done, but because the page can rest while you do. The next chapter is already waiting in the paper. Eternal Pines, a promise that the map of this place continues whether or not you are looking. And the ocean goes on with its old mathematics, adding and subtracting weather until morning makes a clean sum on shore. The pines do not begin at the ground. They begin in ways that matter here under it, roots braided in patient darkness, moving past stones with the civility of old neighbors, beneath porches and sidewalks, beneath cellar steps, and the cool slab behind the diner where morning dough rests. Their threads pass on news the way families pass recipes, quietly, with substitutions where needed, always for someone's good. A sapling that had a hard winter receives sugars from a trunk that did not. A tree that holds the hill receives steadiness from those who do not. We say forest and imagine trunks, but the town knows the forest's first language is below, in a place that has always had time. Above ground, the pines carry that time into shape. Bark learns the exact gray of a cloud before rain. Needles hold moonlight more gently than glass. Cones open when they decide weather has earned it, not when weather demands. If you sit with your back to one of them, a big one, with the shallow bowl at its base where knees and backs have found rest for 50 years, you can feel the old arithmetic working. Sun into sap, wind into posture, root into ring. The tree counts in a system you will never see written down, and still you understand it. There are years with narrow rings because the forest needed to hold its breath. There are years with wide rings because holding was easy. The pines judge neither. The town borrowed its habits here. Houses lean just enough to look friendly. Fences trade boards and nobody writes it down. People keep each other in little ways, dropping off a pie tin with 2 slices arranged like a crescent moon, and a promise, setting a broom against a storefront before opening bells, oiling hinges, a midnight can pass through without catching. These small, repeated acts are the above-ground version of roots. You cannot point at them all at once. You can know they are there. If you stand at the edge of the trees and look back, Gravity Falls arranges itself like a sentence you have known since childhood. There is the bell tower with its semicolon, pauses without endings. There is the library's comma, breath that makes sense of what comes next. There is the bridge's M dash, crossing without breaking. We will not write the long line here. You already felt it underfoot. The attic window is a colon, promising that what follows will be worth staying awake for a little longer, and the diner's neon is a soft period. Enough for now, more tomorrow. Deeper in, where mushrooms keep their own soft parliament on fallen logs, the forest air tastes faintly of resin, the word for time when it slows down enough to be sweet. It is not perfume. It is the truth of sap, which is work made visible, and it says, if you cannot be fast, be steady. Be rings. Be shade. Be the sound needles make when wind walks through with good shoes and good manners. You could name every pine if you wanted. Children try for a summer, and then grow out of the list and into something better, the habit of noticing. That one with the squirrel highway from ditch to stump. That one with the woodpecker's Morse code you could set a heartbeat to. That one that saved the kite 2 years ago by catching it in a high crook and lowering it branch to branch during the night like a careful staircase. The names become actions. Actions become stories. Stories become how the town carries itself toward dark and back again. On winter evenings, the pines learn to ring with light without bulbs. Ice writes its short vocabulary along each needle and then asks the moon to read it. The forest answers with the quiet sound you heard once as a child when you put your ear to a seashell, and the word ocean meant everything you had not yet learned to say. In summer, the trees invent shade as an art form, laying it delicately over the earth like netting over berries on a porch table. The pattern changes hour by hour. People follow it without thinking, chairs inching forward, blankets rotating, books shifting from one knee to the other. A pine makes suggestions. The town accepts them. Even the wind here becomes a local. A storm makes a case at the ridge and then lowers its voice when it reaches the flats. Gusts arrive with pockets full of out-of-town stories and let most of them go on the far side of the river. By the time air slips between 2 trunks you could wrap your arms around, it knows what kind of night this is. Not a test, not a lesson, only the hour when things agree to be themselves kindly. Owls count. Foxes sign their names neatly. A deer steps onto the path because the path wanted to be stepped onto. There are pines that watched goodbyes and kept them gentle. There are pines that listened to hello said in 3 languages and knew every meaning. There are pines that leaned a half-inch over a decade to shade a bench the exact amount an old man needed in August. If you have ever cried here, a ring holds that salt somewhere. If you have ever laughed here, a ring holds that air bubble too. When you leave, the forest does not keep a ledger. It keeps your shape for a while, the way a pillow keeps a cheek, then redistributes that softness into the general fun. From the ridge, you can see the lake's lid of light on lantern nights and the river's threaded shine on every other kind. The bell tower's face is a coin in a pocket you always meant to spend on something small and necessary. The market's string of bulbs is a necklace the trees allowed for an evening. The library's window is a spill of honey from a jar being shared. The carnival's slow wheel is a breath. The attic's little star stickers show themselves to no one but still glow because being seen is not a requirement for being true. When people talk about forever, the forest says nothing and shows rings. When they talk about home, the forest says nothing and shows shade. When they talk about mystery, the forest says nothing and allows mushrooms to print their tiny white alphabets on the underside of things. It is a poor lecturer and the town's best teacher. It will never tell you what to think. It will sit with you until you do not need to think so hard. There is a meaning of gravity that is not about falling at all. It is about being held in place by kindness large enough to include drift. The pines practice that. Birds come and go. Migrations slant overhead like underlines. Leaves from other trees skitter in on borrowed wind and are permitted to rest as if they belonged. We are a place, the pines might say if they spoke, where staying and leaving know each other's names. If you return in 10 years, the clearing you loved will have moved 3 feet to the left. The root that made you stumble will be softer, having learned manners. The stump that was a seat will be a table because 100 cups taught it the difference. The little path you thought you invented will be, as always, the old one that your footsteps recognized. That is what eternal looks like when it is not marble or thunder. It is continuity without announcement. The atlas has left the center of this page mostly unmarked. A ringed cross-section of a trunk fills one corner. In another, a tiny person leans against a line that stands for a tree and looks, for once, the right size. Needles are dots. Cones are ovals with patience. Across the bottom margin in the small, deliberate hand you have met before. Roots are the town holding hands where no one can see. Under it, a second line. Drawn later in a pencil that smudges, sleep is how we practice being held. You close your eyes and feel the pines continue doing what they do without you. That is their gift. Nothing here requires your watching to stay true. The bell tower can keep time alone. The river remembers whether or not you remind it. The lanterns find the reeds. The market sets itself, sells favors, vanishes with crumbs. The library breathes. The attic glows after dark for nobody in particular. The giants move in ways that do not need witnesses. Codes hum. The carnival turns slowly like a thought you don't have to finish. Stars loose their pockets and the bridge collects what falls. The ocean practices breathing where you can see it. The pines go on, and you, for once, can stop. You fit the ribbon back between the atlas pages where it always seems to find the right chapter without looking. The table has learned the shape of the book and is pleased to hold it. The room has learned your weight and is pleased to be quiet around it. Outside, a breeze that knows the house by first name visits the curtains and leaves without leaving a note. You are ready to let the atlas close. The cover is warm from your hands. The stitching along the spine looks like a row of houses at dusk. Door, window, window, door. You smooth it once with your palm, and the leather takes the gesture, as if gestures were a language it missed. The kettle on the back burner sighs the kind of sigh a lake makes when the last lantern goes out. Somewhere in the wall, pipes arrange their own lullaby of metal remembering water. You do not snap the atlas shut. You lower it to its own rest and let the covers meet with the gentlest possible agreements. The little whisper it gives is not a sound so much as a decision. Later, the page ribbon lies like a river under the cover. You leave it there on purpose. Rivers do that. continue without permission. Around you, the house rehearses its roles for the night. The clock chooses a tick that decides against urgency. The chair obliges another inch of comfort you hadn't asked for. The lamp trims its halo as a storekeeper does, before turning a sign to close. Not because there is nothing left to sell, but because the neighbors know the stock and will come back. The floor learns which boards will speak when you cross them on your way to bed, and one by one they choose not to. Through the open window, the pines let a small draft in that smells like needles, and the honest wood under them, like old math done right. The bell tower declines to ring. A fox writes its signature in the alley, and the air brings in just enough of the ink for you to know the letter arrived. You hear a car on the highway, a far sweep with a soft plane attached to it. Someone going home to a town like this one. Someone leaving one. Someone who will look at the outline of trees and feel steadier for no reason they could say. You think, without having to tell the thought to be quiet, the atlas will be here in the morning. You will open it at another page, and the town will meet you there without rolling its eyes, or you will not. The town will do its nights without audience. You can rest. The atlas has taught you that, though it would not take credit. Books that know their job send you away when you are ready. On the table beside the atlas lies a pencil with a note in that small, deliberate hand. If you wait before morning, you may open to any page. The words do not instruct. They keep you company. You blow out the candle, or you turn the lamp's switch with the practiced softness of someone who has learned that endings do not have to be crisp to be complete. The room takes the dark easily. The way to bed is the way you have always known it. Door frame, hallway, the picture on the wall that looks back with patience. The bed has already made room for the weight you will give it. Sheets accept. The pillow surrounds. The ceiling holds nothing that needs you. If you look, one or two of the attic's old glow stars seem to have escaped and set themselves gently above you, as if to say, "We'll watch a little. You sleep." Before your eyes seal the last seam, the town passes quietly under your ribs one more time. River braid, bell hush, lantern drift, pie steam, card catalog, wheel turn, reed choir, window glow, mass swing, root knit. Nothing in a hurry, nothing missing anyone in a way that hurts. The last sound is the one a page makes long after it has been turned, when the line you loved catches up to where you are. It is a sound you feel where your hand was. The atlas breathes because you do. The pines hold hands where no one can see. The bell waits because waiting is its job. The river keeps and keeps and then lets go. The giants do their unspectacular, miraculous work. The market will set its tables when the moon is helpful. The library will keep its jar. The carnival will choose a night and glow like the answer to a question you didn't have to ask. The stars will loosen their pockets. The bridge will collect initials and promise to keep them kind. The ocean will continue its old arithmetic and throw light for anyone who needs to count. You sleep. And the small note on the atlas, ink drying to a quiet mat, as if it had been written just now for you, and for everyone who would come after, says only, "Good night, traveler. Gravity Falls will wait."